Hotep Black Power, giving honor to the ancestors, to the Creator, my sister, Chief of Staff Brother Harris Abdul, my father, my in-laws, and all of our ancestors, as well as all of my followers, subscribers, and brothers and sisters all over the planet. I got a few things that I'm going to discuss today. First of all, 19-year-old black Filipino student was lynched in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Now, like I told y'all, this is the third lynching this year. In 5 months, we've had 3 lynchings. And so, what I've been trying to get across to you all is that this racism, white supremacy, outlashing, and murdering of black people has not stopped. It has never stopped. Lynching and hangings have never stopped in this country. As far as we can remember, during the times of physical chattel slavery here in the United States, lynching and hangings have never stopped since. To this day, it has never stopped. But yet, we keep going around yelling that everything is okay, and people don't see blacks, don't see any racism, and all of this whole bunch of crock of shit that the middle class and upper class blacks and black politicians and so-called leaders and dignitaries are coming out their mouth with this nonsense, and we need to put an end to this. And that's why when people ask me who are the leaders in the black community, it's you. Any one of you who that is out there fighting for the liberation and salvation of the black nation, you are a black leader. So this 19-year-old Filipino girl was lynched and hung and right beside a Walmart, and she was there for approximately a couple of months because decomposition had began to set in, meaning her body had beginning to rot and decompose. And so you mean to tell me that no one knew, especially at a Walmart, where Walmart is a major key player in the martial law aspect of racial insurrection, if it occurs or when it occurs in this country. Walmart plays a major role. So this sister was murdered, and we need not to forget about it. Let's send some energy to her people, and you know, let's ask the Creator to take her to the ancestral realm. Now, I'm gonna talk about since they had this Prince Harry bullshit over the weekend, like that was something so major for black people. Black people don't play a role in this. Just because a bed wench gets to marry one of the slave master's sons and get to sleep in the slave master's house in the plantation, Buckingham Palace, we jump up and down and celebrate like that's a big thing. You know, and we need to cut that dumb shit out. We need to focus on the key things that are destroying us. And this Meghan Markle shit is nothing, another sleeping with the enemy. And you watch how many sisters are going to get their swirl on. You're gonna see a lot of sisters trying to be a Meghan Markle or Meghan and Harry, which this started in slavery, where the mulatto was attracted to the slave master's son. And so the slave master's son, knowing he got the best woman on the planet, he fights the slave master to have his bed wench sleep in the mansion. And like I said, you know, as well as the lynching, this swirling shit has been going on from the time that our ancestors stepped off the boat as well. And all they doing, all these slave masters' children is doing is marrying rape victims. And you're gonna see a lot of this. You know, the black woman. You know, a lot of these black women that, you know, this feminist bullshit. You know, where, you know, now they're saying after their ancestors been whipped and raped, their great-great-grandmothers been whipped and raped, you sit there and marry and suck on the penis of the slave master's great-great-grandson. And you do it with pride. But yet you look down on the black man with scorn. You know, but yet you smile and you skin and grin when it comes to sleeping with these cave dogs. And I know I'm doing Malcolm X today because everybody and their grandmother was trying to do a Malcolm X video Saturday, but I'm just going to do a briefing because most of you who are tuned in, especially to this channel, you have a certain level of consciousness, meaning that you know a lot about Malcolm X. So I need not to, go into grave details, but just, talk about some of the major points in his existence. Everybody know May 19th is his birthday. You know, he was treated like shit, being in foster homes and group homes, and, called all types of names, but he was able, to overcome that. He was able to go through that. And which gave him rage as a teenager. He didn't play with no crackers. Matter of fact, even though he was sleeping with one, he was pimping him. He was using him because based on his experience with white people, none of it wasn't good to this point. And so that's how he carried it as Detroit Red. His parents being followers of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. They were Garveyites. And Malcolm's father, Earl Little, was a powerful Garveyite that feared no man. And so it took a gang of Klansmen to murder him, lay him down on the train tracks, and he was ran over by a train. But that was how powerful Earl Little was. His mother was a mulatto, and she ended up losing her mind, and she ended up going into a psychiatric institute for several years. Malcolm, upon getting released from prison, while he was in prison, he ran into some brothers that were members of the Nation of Islam that really blew his mind. And once he began to study he stated in his autobiography that Elijah Muhammad came in his cell and was sitting down and appeared as if, you know, a real like figure, which it was, if you understand us as the original people, that we have that type of power. And so from that point on, Malcolm was gun-ho in the Nation of Islam. You know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when Malcolm met Elijah, Malcolm broke down. You know, that's why I don't like to talk about the movie, because the movie, Spike Lee just really kind of touched on a couple of things, but he really fucked over Malcolm's life with that movie. You know, so in a rush to get paid. And Malcolm swore to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he would be committed and a true follower of the Nation of Islam. Now, this is where I have discrepancies at. You know, Master Fard Muhammad, who was strictly, who you can clearly see was a European. So I don't know how this came about, but nevertheless, he was the one that was supposedly anointed Elijah Muhammad, and Elijah Muhammad became the leader of the Nation of Islam. But by the way, Elijah Muhammad came out of the Moorish Science Temple under the leadership of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. As you can see, Elijah Muhammad has the fez on, which is the hat that the Moors wear, that are members of the Moorish Science Temple, and Moorish nationals, and Moors, period. You know, and Malcolm was mesmerized by the power of Elijah Muhammad. And Malcolm wanted to be exactly like Elijah Muhammad. As far as Malcolm was concerned, Elijah Muhammad was his father. And then Malcolm started off selling Final Call newspapers, which were back then called Muhammad Speaks, and selling bean pies and newspapers. You know, he was the highest seller in newspapers, you know, and he worked his way up, became the national spokesman for Elijah Muhammad. But at the same time, you had people that were waiting in the cut that were filled with jealousy and envy. This is a picture of a young Minister Farrakhan, who talked real bad about Malcolm. Now, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm were very, very tight, very tight. And Malcolm, Sam Cooke, Ali, who was Cassius Clay at the time, were very tight. And when Ali defeated Sonny Liston, that's when he decided to convert to the Nation of Islam. Here you see him with a picture, in this picture with Minister Farrakhan. You know, Malcolm also, when he met the beautiful, gorgeous, powerful sister queen, Betty Shabazz. Now, a lot of people may not know, Betty Shabazz was in the Nation of Islam way before Malcolm was. You know, she was demonstrating and she was putting in work. And Elijah Muhammad, I believe he put them together, Because see, in the nation, they want they want the men to have a woman that's half the man's age plus 7, and she has to be able to cook, clean, bear children, and be committed to her husband as well as to the Nation of Islam. And so they had 6 girls. And Betty Shabazz was an awesome mother. You know, and they put in work together. They represented the black family. Malcolm and Betty never actually got into any arguments or shouting matches, very rarely. But in public, they conducted themselves like strong black men and women. And that's what I really respected about the both of them. Now, when Elijah Muhammad when Malcolm found out that Elijah Muhammad was sleeping with those teenage girls that were supposed to be his secretaries, you know, Malcolm was crushed. I mean, crushed. You know, and not really understanding what was taking place, because you have to look at two sides now. In Islam and in other religions, a man can have more than one wife or what you would call concubines and what have you. But that's not what the Nation of Islam taught. And so Malcolm was hurt and then became infuriated and went public with the information about Elijah Muhammad. And as well, Elijah Muhammad in turn was hurt. Malcolm was barred from the Nation of Islam, and this is where the threats, the death threats, the bombing of his house, and all these things took place. You know, where Malcolm had to protect his family. So it was like the whole Nation of Islam versus brother Malcolm X, which was truly unfair. And the ones that had the jealousy in their hearts from the beginning, this situation just accelerated the hate towards Malcolm. Minister Farrakhan being one of them, and at the time he was Lewis X, and he wanted Malcolm's position, and so he instigated and created the atmosphere and the climate of hate to have Malcolm's life taken, because there was a $10,000 reward if someone would cut Malcolm's tongue out, put it on a plate, and hand it to Elijah Muhammad. And so what Malcolm did, he created his own movement called the OAAU, Organization of Afro-American Unity. And this is where the discrepancy comes in, where people thought that when Malcolm went to Mecca that he said, you know, the white man wasn't the devil anymore. He did not say that. What he said was, if the white man was to submit to Islam and the teachings of Islam, that black and white could work side by side. He didn't say anything about them not being devils. And so that's where a lot of misinformation comes from. You know, even though all the things that was taking place, you know, Malcolm still held his head up with a smile. He still thought that, you know, that there may be some hope, that maybe his life may be spared. in which it wasn't. That's Malcolm. He was shot with a shotgun and a couple of pistols in the Audubon Ballroom, February 21st, 1965, which was a tragic day because the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, the New York City NYPD, along with the Nation of Islam and the CIA, were all involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. That's an autopsy photo. And the thing that I didn't like is that you would murder a man in front of his babies and his wife. You know, how low down can you be to do some foul shit like that? You know, and Minister Farrakhan throughout the years has continually tried to justify killing Malcolm in front of his children. But how can you do that? How can you justify that when you endorse Scientology? Malcolm had two viewings. You know, one in his everyday suit and tie, and the other in, you know, his Islamic garb. Ozzie Davis eulogized Malcolm. Elijah Muhammad denied having anything to do with the assassination of Malcolm X, which we know was a total lie, total bold-faced lie. And you know, people today, members of the Nation of Islam and others and sympathizers, you know, they defend this situation. They defend and make justification for Malcolm X being murdered in front of his babies and his wife. But how would you feel? How would you feel if that was to happen? And then another thing, you know, you have members of the Nation of Islam that, you know, they go around and threatening people. They may say something and tell the truth about some of the injustices that take place within the Nation of Islam. Because Malcolm was going to clean house. It was a lot of corruption during that time in the nation. And it still is corruption. It still is greed. And Louis X, his dream came true after his participation in the murdering of Malcolm X. Now, he wasn't the trigger man or anything, but some people, you know, they say loose lips sink ships, you know, and the things he said out of his mouth to instigate the climate of hate that resulted in the assassination of Malcolm. And so he became the top dog. But that wasn't over because, you know, like Garvey said, you may have captured the lion, but I have some cubs in the bush. And this is Malcolm's grandson, Malcolm Shabazz, in which he was accused of setting Betty Shabazz on fire, which he did not do that. What happened? He was a little child, he was a teenager, and they got into an argument. Betty was trying to discipline Malcolm, and he got mad and set the curtains on fire in the kitchen. And when he tried to put it out, it spread it. Then Betty tried to put the fire out, and she ran out of breath, you know, was severely burned. And Malcolm Shabazz went to jail for that, juvenile institution. However, he came home and he became an avid follower of Islam. He didn't join the Nation of Islam because he hated the nation for what they did to his grandfather. but he was a revolutionary, a black nationalist, a Pan-Africanist, and he was murdered. And it is said that Barack Obama may have played a role in this, because he went to Mexico and talked to Mexican revolutionaries over there a week before Malcolm Shabazz went, and those revolutionaries were to work with Malcolm Shabazz. But Obama went over there, and whatever he said to the Mexican movement over there, I don't know their names offhand, but it resulted in them robbing and pushing Malcolm Shabazz off a roof, killing him. And he wanted to be just like his grandfather, just like him. You know, and they're leaders like Dr. Khalid Muhammad, who came in later on under the leadership of Minister Farrakhan, actually went through the same exact thing that Malcolm went. He was put out of the nation, scrutinized, and then later on murdered. All under the leadership of Minister Farrakhan. And so, one thing I will say about Minister Farrakhan, during the early 80s, up into the early 90s, maybe 91, the Nation of Islam was on fire. They were marching strong and hard under Farrakhan's leadership. But other than that, the Nation of Islam has become one of the most, next to the NAACP, it's just another movement that's willing to be here and there and everywhere along with white supremacy. You may hear Farrakhan make some of these loud speeches and whatnot for 5 or 10 minutes, but the actions of the Nation of Islam doesn't coincide with what comes out of Minister Farrakhan's mouth. You know, when you endorse Scientology, you know, and the LGBT community. Malcolm X still lives on. As a matter of fact, brothers and sisters, he lives on in our hearts, in our energy. We take on the energy of Malcolm, because those who have studied Malcolm X understand who he is, who he was, and a piece of Malcolm is in you. For all you revolutionaries and warriors, let's not forget the brother. Let's not forget the brother for the work that he put in, the things that he was trying to do, why he was sent here to do what he had done. A lot. So, that's it for Malcolm X, you know. And I'm going to come back to y'all with... I'm going to be talking about the entertainers that went through periods of substance abuse. Ones who have passed on and those who are still here. Some who are still here. So I'll be getting back with you shortly. Hotep, Black Power.